Welcome to Not Just Money with your hosts, Doretta and Lee. This isn't your typical podcast about finances. It's a podcast about all the money conversations we aren't having, sometimes not even with ourselves. Join us on this journey of hard truths, lived experience, and the wisdom that comes from both. Because money is never just about money.
Hey Lee, ready to get into part 2 on savings hacks?
Ready as always, especially since we are going to be digging into the fun stuff. How to save, or at least get maximum value for your discretionary spending dollars. But before we start, I actually have a few follow-ups from part 1. We've had some comments and additions come in that people might find useful.
Okay, go.
Well, okay, on 5 easy dishes, we had general agreement on eggs, pasta, and noodles, and also some really thoughtful additions, such as tacos. And we got called out on the fast, easy meals that needed to be cooked at all. So they mentioned salads with added protein, of course, and something one listener called the basic French. Some good bread, cheese, olives, fruit kind of thing.
It's a good one. I like that. What about roast chicken?
Let's just say definitely split. People also suggested shopping with a list, community kitchens, local farmers markets in season, and apps like Too Good to Go. No, I've never tried them, but have you?
No, but I do know some people who have, and they like it well enough. Although I guess it depends on where you go, and they seem to get an awful lot of baked goods, like sweet things.
Oh, that's interesting because there's tons of, and I get them on my social feeds, like Less Than Perfect or something like that, where they send you weirdly shaped fruits and vegetables that are okay to eat, but they're not um supermarket quality, and they just ship you a box. Apparently there's a lot of root vegetables in there. I don't know, but those kept popping up in my feed. What else? Oh, there were also strong feelings about how to save money on cleaning products, and they generally fell into 2 categories. Buy the large refills. One listener shared that they live in a tiny space and hit Costco once a year with their mom, then stored the large refills under their bed.
Good idea.
Yeah, it's very practical. I also have a friend who stores their winter tires under their bed. I don't know how sanitary that is, but you make use of your space, I guess.
I
Um,
guess.
the other category was to make your own. So vinegar and baking soda, washing soda. Is it washing
Yeah,
soda?
they're two different things actually.
Really? What is washing
Yeah.
soda?
I think it's borax or something. I can remember I used to use it occasionally when I had teenage boy sports, all that stuff. And you could add it to get that really ground in dirt out. But it's one of the key ingredients in detergents, as I recall. I'd have to look it up. But yes,
Oh,
it is absolutely,
okay.
absolutely a different thing. Yeah.
Because I think we use at home water, vinegar, and like lemon juice. But if you do a quick search, you can see recipes from everyone from the David Suzuki Foundation to Martha Stewart and everyone in between.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to check out some of that stuff. I used to do some of that, but I kind of got out of the habit, and that would be worth checking into again. What about utilities and transportation? Did you get any feedback on that?
So we did get some interest in how to buy a car, so maybe we'll earmark that for a future episode.
Okay.
One addition on utilities that makes sense is that lots of folks are on time of use rate plans where it's cheaper to run an appliance in off-peak times, overnight, early morning, weekends, and holidays. Because I think that makes sense. Like for us, when we live in condos, we don't necessarily have that. It doesn't matter when we use our electricity, it's always the same. But I think if you're like
Okay.
in a single home, what's that?
Yeah, we have it. My condo has that. We have different rates because everything's individually metered and stuff.
Oh, that's fair. Even
Yeah.
when I was in my old condo and it was individually metered, It was still one rate. So I guess it really depends on the provider. So maybe something to check out if you don't know the answer to that at your own home. But yeah, that was it.
Good one. Okay, really good points. So let's move on then to discretionary spending, where lots of people can get carried away. Things like fashion and toys and entertainment and experiences.
You mean all the fun ways to spend and potentially a lot of easy ways to get into trouble.
Yeah, but about that, before we start with the fun stuff, savings hacks, I want to remind listeners that here at Not Just Money, we are not advocating some kind of no spend frugal life. That is not what we're about. We're about choices, choices that align with your values and your resources. We are not about austerity just for the sake of austerity. And so I'll refer our listeners back to episode 3 on basic budgeting because we talked a lot there about understanding the difference between wants and needs and about making choices. And because really, unless you have unlimited resources, in which case you're probably not listening
Wait,
to
wait,
this
wait, wait, wait,
podcast.
wait. Wait, 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 wait. That's not true. That's not true. Hold on, hold on. We can unpack that for a moment. Okay, unlimited resources doesn't mean you have a healthy relationship with money. You
Agreed.
just yeah, you just don't worry about meeting your basic needs. It's not and it shouldn't be about how much money you have or don't have. It's still about choices. And I know it sounds cliche, and I'm sure people will say only people with money will say this, but money doesn't buy you happiness. It doesn't hurt, but at the end of the day, it is only a component of it. Now, total sidebar. As a 90s kid, one of the most influential money quotes came from the movie Forrest Gump. Now, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a great film. Forrest is a simple guy, and he ends up with a lot of money, and his response was, one less thing to worry about. Now I'm going to pause there and let that sink in. Think about everything else on your plate. It's not just money. But, money problems can be at any income level. I really want to take the myth away that just because you earn what is traditionally seen as a high salary, you don't have the same struggles as someone who makes half that amount, because there's all sorts of stressors that come in at different income levels and net worth levels. And I think it's important to call that out, that this really isn't just about if you are making a certain amount of money and are trying to find ways to save. You should be doing that at any income level.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll give you that. Okay, so what it's really about then is focusing on the things that matter, the things that bring joy to your life. And I would say not just the big joys to your life, but the little day-to-day joys, the little bits of happiness. Before we start talking about getting the most for your money on discretionary spending, I just wanted to remind our listeners of that. So that some of the ideas we're going to throw out may seem like overkill frugality to some people and perfectly sensible aha moments to other people. And that's okay.
Absolutely. I say to every one of you, you do you. The ideas we're going to throw out here are ideas, stories about how we do things.
It's doing us.
Exactly. Us doing us. Um, and maybe you can pick something up from our experiences, and that will give you more choices. So, where do you want to start?
Let's start with clothes and fashion. Because my quick and dirty social surveys and to be honest, my observations of life in general tell me that it's both a major expense and a major regret for many women and increasingly for many men as well. I would argue that it is increasingly also not just a financial issue, it's also an environmental issue.
Now, obviously, there is a needs element here. We need clothes, footwear, all that stuff. What we don't need is a closet bursting with fast fashion.
Exactly. It's a choice. So it's kind of like with cars that we talked about last week, and honestly, it's like a gazillion other things too. It's about establishing the line between what you need and what you want.
That line gets determined by a lot of things. Your job, your hobbies, special events, how fast your kids grow, who you're trying to impress, the weather.
Whether, I had this friend from South Africa, and he used to complain bitterly about the weather in Canada. He resented needing clothes for 4 different seasons.
Yeah, well, there is a necessary minimum here, and Canada's necessary minimum is higher than a lot of countries.
And there's also that whole, like, self-expression side of what we choose to wear, and I'll be honest, I really like clothes. I enjoy them. I feel better, I feel more confident when I really like what I'm wearing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. For me, it's been an evolution. How I felt about clothes was a direct reflection of my own self esteem. I can tell you that as my confidence grew, as a person, my style, clothing choices changed.
Tell you a secret, I didn't enjoy clothes when I was younger, or if I were to be perfectly honest, I didn't let myself enjoy clothes because I wanted to be taken as a serious person. And caring about clothes seemed to be kind of frivolous, and it wasn't the image that I wanted to project. And then there was this phase with my first breakthrough job where my mentor, who was one of the few sort of older women in a serious position, sent me to a dress shop where they actually curated your wardrobe. I had to take out a bank loan to afford it, though.
Yeah, I wonder though. Okay, so obviously this is a podcast, so people can't really see us in real life. It's also because you're a very petite woman. And maybe that level of what you're saying is seriousness also had to kind of make up for the fact that you're probably the shortest person in the room. I mean, definitely nowadays, but I don't know, like in
That's
the
true.
beginning of your
Um,
career.
well, and also, in the beginning of my career, I was the youngest person in the room and the only woman. And sometimes I was like the youngest person by 20 years. So looking serious actually mattered. What are these clothes that this woman curated for me? I had one suit, and that suit was a black suit, and that alone was half my total budget. Seriously. And I wore that suit for a gazillion years, and I called it my bitch suit. And when I really wanted people to pay attention to me, that's what I wore. I wore my bitch suit.
I guess that's what you call investment buying, but more an investment in yourself.
All right, then. I mean, it's not investment. People talk about investment buying clothes, and they're just wrong. I mean, investment is money you don't spend that goes to work for you, earning more money. And clothes don't earn you more money like that. I call it value buying, and value buying is pretty much my philosophy for everything. And I know you and I aren't totally aligned on this, but I believe in buying the best quality that you can afford and take care of it. And my experience is that over time, I actually spend less money that way and I can invest those savings.
So you are definitely not a fan of what I call cheap and cheerful.
Not really, not generally. I'm not a minimalist by any stretch of the imagination, but I am generally about fewer, better things. My experience is I mostly regret cheap and cheerful, and it ends up in donations or the garbage.
Well, first, I've seen your closet. I'm not
Hey,
sure I would say fewer to
okay, okay, okay. But remember, many years of collecting, right?
Mm, mhm, mhm.
Most of my clothes are more than 10 years old.
But that's also something to think about, right? If you're gonna keep something for decades, you wanna make sure that it's probably the only one you're ever going to need. Alright, and my second point to your comments was that low cost doesn't always mean cheap. Now, I have stuff that would be considered fast fashion, but it still looks fine, and it's probably been 10 or more years later. So I do think the key here is you have to learn how to take care of your stuff. But whether it's a brand name or air quote quality piece, I'm going to say that's debatable.
Quality versus quantity. That's been a pretty wide tangent. Anyway, let's do a quick fire on fashion savings. You go.
Okay, the obvious, keep a needs and wants list and shop the sales. I was told once when I lived in France for a short period of time to always shop the J months. So, like January, June, and July, because that's when things tend to go on sale. But you have to know your prices to make sure that the sale is really a sale and not just a gimmick to try to get you to buy something, and never fall victim to pressure sales. So if it's a time limited deal, think about it before you click or pick it up and buy.
Say also, fashion's an area where you should use every trick in the book to eliminate impulse buys. Put the friction back into all your purchases. Make online purchases harder and more intentional by deleting all your credit card information online, implementing a mandatory wait period, all that kind of stuff. And you can go back to our earlier episodes on saving and budgeting where we talk about this kind of stuff in detail.
Like, ask yourself if you really need a particular designer or brand name. Like, why?
Even more than that, ask yourself who you're trying to impress. I mean, personally, I try to avoid wearing anything that's obviously branded. Sometimes you can't avoid it. Confession, I've got a trench coat that I have literally been wearing for 42 years, even though its lining is a very visible and aspirational brand. But in my defense, it was not widely recognized when I bought it 42 years ago.
Always ahead of your time, Doretta. Um, I find as I age, I am less inclined to promote brands on my body, but I do think there is a time for that. Now, I loved my brand names when I first launched into the world. I had a paycheck and could afford these luxuries, and I think the need to fit in can be really strong, especially if we have grown up watching others in their name brands when we couldn't afford them. I totally get it.
Yeah, fair point. What do you think about counterfeits and knockoffs? I'm really uneasy about this, and I found myself going into one of my deep dark holes here.
Uh-oh.
Okay, but here are the facts, okay? And we'll even stick some links here if you want to go down those deep dark holes yourself. According to the OECD, about 2.5% of world trade is estimated to be knockoffs and counterfeits, and it's growing. It was $467 billion US in 2025. That's the estimate. Now, it's not just clothes, of course. There's counterfeit everything: food, wine, cosmetics, drugs, technology. Apparently, French wine is a huge thing. But the thing about knockoffs is to ask yourself, like, where does the money go? And I'll tell you where it goes. It goes to organized crime and terrorist networks and criminal entrepreneurs, and the profits then get channeled into other criminal activities like drugs and people trafficking. The 2015 terrorist attack on Charlie Hebdo, for example, that was funded by counterfeit products. So I am really seriously against the money order principle.
It does give you pause to reflect some of your choices on where you spend your money and generally. Now, there was a time where designer stuff fell off the back of a truck, or these factories in third world countries allowed their employees an extra hour to make a few items so that they could sell to supplement their income. But to your point, I think the world is so different now, and I think the criminal element has really risen. You look at money laundering, human trafficking, drugs, violence. I'd really encourage our listeners to read up on it, especially if this is a habit that you do. But in all honesty, as someone who has owned knockoffs, I get more compliments on stuff that isn't branded.
Well, quite apart from those ethical issues, did you know there are actually psychological effects of wearing knockoffs? There was a study done a number of years ago, early 2000s, I think, and Dan Ariely, who's a really, really big name in behavioral economics, was one of the authors. And they wanted to see if there were hidden psychological costs to wearing fakes. And they did this study, which is called the counterfeit self. Really neat experiment with a large group of women who are all given a pair of expensive designer sunglasses. The sunglasses were actually all real, but half of the women, and they were selected completely randomly, were told that they were fakes. And then they had to do some tasks and report the results and answer some questionnaires, that kind of stuff. And here's the thing: the women who thought the sunglasses were fake were significantly more likely to lie and to cheat. Like 70% of them lied compared to 30% of the women who thought they were real. And they also had to answer a number of ethical questions. And the women who thought they were wearing fake sunglasses thought other people were more dishonest, less truthful, and they were more likely to act unethically. I think that's
Hmm.
fascinating.
Okay, now I like Dan's stuff, I really do. Well, that came out strange. I don't know Dan Ariely. That made it seem like we were friends and we were hanging out and having coffee lattes together. Okay, but I question this particular study. Now, because I haven't read it, I mean, this is just, me asking questions, but I wonder if the women knew that some of them got the real ones and some didn't. Because I'm thinking that it has to do with more of a question of fairness, not just because I own a knockoff. I don't think buying knockoffs means that as a person, you're a cheat or distrustful. And in this case, they were given them. So it wasn't actually their choice to own a branded item or a knockoff version. I think what's happening is that you think you were cheated and therefore become that version of yourself.
I don't think it mentioned whether all of the women knew that some people got fakes and some people got real. Interesting point, and maybe that's part of it. But in real life, I mean, why do you wear a knockoff? Because you like the style and you can't afford it, or because you think you're fooling other people and people can't really tell the difference between a knockoff anyway? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting point. Like maybe people have knockoffs because they're trying to convince other people they're something they're not. I don't know. Is there a fundamental dishonesty there?
I think there's definitely some psychological questions to unpack there on society as a whole, too. I think it
Yeah.
goes beyond the individual.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
I think so.
you know,
Anyway, I guess for me, I think the best policy is maybe just to buy the best quality you can afford and take care of it so it lasts as long as possible and focus on quality, especially for things you have to replace all the time. Because buying cheap is kind of a subscription in disguise. You kind of have to pay for it again and again. I remember when I was a teenager, a friend of mine's dad once said to me, I always buy quality. I'm too poor to buy cheap.
no, I'm gonna be on the fence on that one. But like you said, maybe the whole point is buy what meets your needs and that you can afford, and then take care of it and see where that takes you, right?
Yeah.
And then if you have to lean into brand names or buy counterfeit products to fit in, ask yourself, do you really want to hang out with these people? Like, I mean, I know Doretta always likes to say, who are you trying to impress? And I mean, you're the only person who has to approve of yourself. No one else needs to.
Yeah. And I think, that point about taking care of it, that really matters. I mean, think about shoes and boots, for example. And this is a really good savings tip. Replace the half soles and heels in your shoes and boots regularly. I mean, keep them clean. For God's sake, protect them from the weather and the winter salt. You will double or triple their lifespan, seriously. And if you don't know how to do that, just look it up. It shocks me how many people ruin perfectly good footwear that they paid hundreds of dollars for just by not taking care of it properly.
Yeah, and that's also true for clothes and jewelry. Keep them clean and in good repair.
Okay, some other hints. Shop vintage or secondhand. It's my personal favorite way to shop. I've been doing it for decades. I will say it is not as fun as it used to be. There is so much more competition for secondhand finds now, which I actually think is a tribute, particularly to Gen Z, because they are all over vintage and good for them. But also, there's a lot more poor quality and fast fashion that's kind of clogging up the vintage distribution line. But there are still deals out there, and there is so much room for creativity. I mean, if you really are looking for a different, more creative look, vintage will get you there before anything else will.
Well, okay, so right now, the hottest TV show, Heated Rivalry, Canadian hockey. You know what? I'm not going to say that online. Let's just say it's hockey love story, but, very physical. And I was reading about this because all their outfits are vintage. So there's actually a specific high-end men's secondhand shop that curates all the looks, and the looks are so important to the show, and I thought I'd share it. Not that I've ever watched it, but everybody's talking about it. All my mom friends are all over that.
Ha! I love it. I love it. One thing about vintage, I will say, you need a good seamstress or somebody who can do alterations for you because often you do have to make some changes to really make it work for you.
And, for little things, you actually should know how to sew.
Oh,
You can
yeah.
save a lot of money by fixing, like, a small hole or a loose button. It makes a huge difference. I think I'd put that on the life skill list along with cooking. Maybe not as important, but up there.
Fair. Yep, I'd agree with that. Okay, now let's talk the beauty buy. Cosmetics, spas, nails, hair, beauty treatments, all that kind of stuff. Again, from my, quick and dirty social media survey, a place where people spend tons of money and where they regret spending money, where they will admit that they overspent. $2.78 billion Canadian market last year, and it's growing, especially at the premium end, and it is youth driven.
Oh, yeah. The age of these youths also scare me. I think there's a term coined, the Sephora generation. Um, yeah, it's frightening, the stories that I've read on this. And when you're sub 30, you have so much collagen. Yes, I know acne can be a thing, but you do not need some of these products that are being promoted to children. Now, if
Yeah.
you have skin concerns, visit a dermatologist. But don't just pick up what you think is trendy. Some of these beauty products can be dangerous and have long-term effects that, will be too late for you to regret in your 40s or 50s. And it's terrifying to think about how young these kids are and how much money they're spending. They get part-time jobs just to meet their beauty product needs. Like this is a thing. But when you think about it, $1.7 billion spent annually with a $26 million increase year over year. That is not pocket change. So we will put a link in the description of some of the data that we've come across if you're really interested.
Okay. So, but basically, the market's huge. It's growing, especially being driven by young people. And here's the thing, the purchases are often driven by impulse and by influencers.
And honestly, like Vaseline, petroleum jelly is probably enough for most people. But that goes to value, and I think that's really interesting because you think, well, if it's so cheap, it can't actually work. But it does.
I have actually been told that by multiple dermatologists. I remember one telling me that if we really wanted people to use petroleum jelly the way it should be used, all we would have to do would be 10 times the price of it, and then people would value it for how good it really is.
Yeah, that's funny, hey?
It's
How we
crazy, eh?
how value is now assigned to a dollar value,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah.
that is that link. It's not necessarily, well, is this the most useful? It's like, well, how much did I pay for it? That's the value I put on
A
it.
and you know what? That actually goes back to your earlier point that cheap does not necessarily mean that it's not quality.
Yes, full circle, I win. Okay, good
Yeah.
talk.
I didn't say you
That's it.
won. I was conceding a point in narrow circumstance.
Uh, but uh, but
Okay.
but I but when I think when we talk about value, that's what we're really trying to get at. It's the value to you as the user. It's not necessarily whether it was $1, $10, or $10,000. It's the utility of that item to making your everyday better.
Okay. Okay. What about other beauty services and, hair, manicures, pedicures, spas, all that kind of stuff, which I understand you young people spend a lot of money on these days.
I mean, it's hard, right? I think in the age of self-care, it's really important to a lot of people. And so how about we share a couple of ideas on where the deals are? I don't want to make a judgment call to say, well, oh my gosh, you do this every week. How dare you? No, that's not what this is about because I think there are real challenges in everyday life, whether that could be a mental health issue that you're dealing with, home crisis, whatever the case may be, right? And sometimes these like little rituals, these little luxuries make the day a little bit easier. So I don't have any objections to that, but just be cognizant that that's where your money is going. I think that's the point we want to make on this. So, Doretta, tips on saving money if this is your thing.
Okay, hair. Beauty schools, teaching salons offer student cuts supervised by professionals, apprentices and junior stylists at established salons. I'd also suggest checking your town or your neighborhood Facebook page. They sound kind of odd, but I know my Facebook page for my neighborhood always has somebody asking best place, best stylist, best prices, and then it will fill up with 35 different suggestions.
That's cute. Okay, mani pedis. Definitely want to shop around. There's tons of them at every corner, especially if you live in a major city center. You probably have less choices if you're in a less urban area. And like Dretta said, ask around. You never know what kind of referrals you might get because generally one person's positive experience will also be the next person's positive experience. And if you value a regular service, check out places or salons that offer membership deals where you can buy, say, a package of 5 and get the 6th free, or 10 services for a discount in another service. And I think those happen a lot because they want you to come back as customers.
Another one I've seen actually, and this is just from seeing it on my neighborhood Facebook page, is that there are sort of freelance people that come to people's houses and do them. And people seem very happy with this, at least in my neighborhood, with some of those people. So that might
Yeah,
be
and
a source
you know,
too.
this is another topic where if this is something that you really care about or you're really interested in, maybe invest in your own kind of home setup.
Okay, another one might be spas. There do always seem to be discounts somewhere for spa services. Groupons, Travel Zoo, that kind of thing. I see them sort of whiz through my feeds all the time. I don't think it hurts to check those out before you actually book one, book for their discount times, that kind of thing.
The only caveat I would put on this, and I am super guilty of this, is that sometimes I'll find a deal and be like, "Oh, wow, that's a great deal. I should totally get on that," even though it was nothing I was looking for, nor do I need. And remember what we always say, you know, it's not money saved if it's a discount and you didn't really need it, right? You're still spending, you're just maybe spending less than what you may have if you were actually going to do one of those services. So something to keep in mind because oftentimes I'll get these deals. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I could totally do that." Not that I would ever go on my own or ever needed it. Okay. Great tips on personal care. But what about entertainment? Where would you start with that, Doretta?
Free stuff. I would start with free stuff. And specifically, I would start with your local library. Communities across Canada have amazing library systems. In fact, Canadians in general are among the heaviest library users in the world. I personally live across the street from my local library. I was there just yesterday picking up books that I'd reserved.
Can I just get a whoop whoop for libraries and library folks and staff? That was my safe place as a kid. That's where I did all my readings of anything from novels to DVDs, VHS at one point, CDs when we didn't have streaming services. For those people who don't know what I'm talking about, yes, there was a time before the internet. Um, and it was great because all of that, like you mentioned, was free. It should be the center of every community.
Yeah, and if you haven't been to your local library recently, although some of the data that I said like 80% of Canadians use their libraries, which is really quite a very, very high number. It's not just about books. Like, I think that's the thing that people need to understand. Not just about books. You can get so much stuff at your library. Plus, they have computers that you can use, free Wi Fi, all of that kind of stuff. There are great sources for events to know what's going on in your community, all that kind of thing. I am adding my big, big whoop whoop to yours for the library. Huge
They're
library fan
they're
here.
great. Yeah, love them. Love the people there too.
Okay, do you have any ideas for other free stuff?
I mean, having a young child, it's kind of important to stress that not everything that you do has to cost money. And I know it's so cliche, and you obviously have to have the time for this, but spending quality time as a family, I think there's nothing that really can substitute that. So, depending on the weather, you think about picnics and park days and hiking and lawn games and beaches and board game nights, exploring unknown neighborhoods on foot. There are so many options, and you don't need to be spending to really enjoy that. In the warm weather, our local park is probably my daughter's favorite place, and we'll often spend hours and hours there doing all sorts of different things. There's
It's
swings.
a pretty awesome park, your local
Yeah,
park.
but, like, the swings or the slide and the splash pads, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think many cities go above and beyond for families to enjoy, and I don't always think we utilize those places enough because, obviously, there's a lot of indoor playgrounds, they're very expensive, and it's great in winter weather, but there's again, even if it is winter, we go skating, it's totally free, play in the snow. And you make play dates like that, and then everybody can minimize their spend, and maybe you'll bring some Timbits, whatever the case may be. I think there's a lot of great options, and sometimes it's just about being creative about them.
Yeah. And I think that in addition to free activities, there are really low cost activities as well that can be alternatives to the kind of high price stuff that people maybe fall into out of habit. I mean, what about entertaining at home? That was much more of a thing, I guess, when I was younger, that we had people over a lot more. We didn't meet in restaurants the way people seem to now. We cooked at home, we had potluck. Sometimes we did takeaway pizza or whatever, and the thing is, like, we lived in tiny spaces and shared spaces too back then. It's like, that is not a new thing. Lots of young people live in small, or that not, I'm not going to say inexpensive, but small, cheapest
Mhm.
they can afford kind of places and always have. That is not new.
Yes, that's fair. Also, something to highlight, annual memberships to places that you'll frequent more than a couple of times a year, you'll save a lot of money on that. I'm thinking museums, galleries, zoos, aquariums, and they offer substantial savings over individual admission prices. And remember that even if you don't want or need a membership, they can have free or discounted entrance days from time to time. You can even get some of these free tickets from your local library. They have them every
Yep.
month. So check it out, get on their email list to find out about upcoming programming or discounted days.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I'll mention is if you haven't heard of Canada Strong, something to look into is over the holidays, they had a special where a lot of the government-owned museums were free for a short period of time. Last summer was also free. They might be bringing it back this summer.
I
And
think I
that
saw
even
that they are.
yeah,
I think I saw they are
and
bringing it back.
and even if you take the train, if you're under 17, it's free on Via. So things like that, get on a list, look it up. It could really save you a lot of money and add some new places for you to explore with your family.
Yep. Another thing, I've noticed a lot of big box stores hold kids events or workshops or things like that. And I think they're free or very low cost. Didn't you tell me you went to some with your daughter at Home Depot or Michael's or something?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they have them monthly, and they're
Wow.
great, right? And again, they're free and they introduce kids to different skills. Shout out to Home Depot. They do a really good job. They get like little overalls, they get kits, and then little hammers. You obviously need an adult to help them, and they distribute paint. They have a whole area for the kids to work on, and it's great because these are also life skills. I want my daughter to be able to hammer a nail or to fix a cabinet if she needed to. I think these are things that we're losing because our lives are so digital. So working with your hands, especially when you're younger, I think adds a lot of depth to your skills as you get older. And Michael's does a lot of arts and crafts because obviously that's what they're known for. Even Indigo, they had an event. It was like $5. It was like a Bluey party, and they had a little activity, but then you got the $5 back in a gift card that you can use at Indigo. So it's kind of an exchange. So there's lots of organizations that do this, and it's all online to register. So look them up. I'm sure one of your local stores offers that. And you can, again, let your kids and family enjoy all sorts of fun activities.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Lots of fun.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I need to bring up, and you know where this is going, subscriptions.
I knew we'd get there.
You know it's gonna happen. I mean, please, 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 everyone, review all your subscriptions and memberships at least once a year. If not, just even put in a little renewal notice in your shared calendar because those auto renewing ones are what's gonna kill you, right? And cancel everything you don't actually use. You can always resubscribe. Whether it's a new subscription, a streaming platform, a gym membership, if you don't
Ugh.
actually yeah, I said that specifically for you. If you don't actually use it, just cancel the damn thing.
And you know what? Be especially careful about renewing things that renew annually. In fact, I would say don't tell things to renew annually, but that's just me. The thing is, they can really sneak up on you. We're in the process of canceling our Highway 407 transponder. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the 407 is a toll highway that's north of Toronto. And canceling the transponder is actually complicated because you have to return the physical device. Now, it only costs $35 a year, and it pays for itself in 3 round trips. And my husband used to use the 407 a lot for work, so it was a real money saver then. We haven't been on the 407 in 5 years. But
So what I heard is that whatever savings you amassed is now probably gone because you have been paying for this item that you have not used for 5 years. That's what I heard.
yeah, well, sorry.
Well, there you go. Life lessons are to be learned everywhere, but I'm gonna bring that up forever, so please be aware. Even streaming platforms. How many do you really need at a time? And that's debatable, right? And they're all pretty much easy to join and cancel at will, so manage them. Limit how many you have at once. Personally, I think 2 is enough. I know I get into a lot of these debates, but how many shows are you actually watching?
Yeah, sometimes you can suspend them. I got a really good deal on an annual membership for ebooks. I walk a lot, I listen to podcasts and ebooks. The vast majority of them are free, but sometimes there's an ebook I want to listen to and it has a super long wait list from the library or the library doesn't have it. And I just suspend that membership until I'm ready for a new book. So my annual membership stretches out for as long as I need it to.
That's a pro tip there. Yeah, another thing about subscriptions, okay, well, it's sort of related. Annual services that have multiple providers like insurance, cell phone, internet, review those too. Don't automatically renew. Sometimes you can get a better rate just by asking. Remember that it costs them a lot of money to lose you as a subscriber or a client than to retain you. So sometimes, fine, you might spend half an hour on the phone. Nobody likes to make those calls. I'm one of those people. But the amount of savings could be substantial, and it's only once a year. You can do this. I believe in you.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what really works for digital news subscriptions. If you try to cancel, they will eventually give you the option at continuing at a new subscriber rate. And it doesn't cost them anything to keep you on a digital subscription, but it costs them a lot to lose you. And I know the one that I have been doing it for years now, the difference between what I pay and what the stated rate is 10 or 15 times more. It's a huge price difference.
Don't say it out loud so they don't hunt you down.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Part 2 of savings hacks, I think, has turned out to be just as long as part 1. But before we quit, let's take a look at some general savings do's and don'ts that have a psychological dimension. I would say the first one is don't shop hungry. We did mention that last week, specifically about grocery shopping, but actually for any shopping. Hunger primes your brain for acquisition and it makes you more impulsive. So eat before you go shopping anywhere, including online.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I can definitely say that I fall prey to that. One I would say is don't shop with people you know will tempt you to overspend. You know who they are.
And I would say a do is to do budget for unspecified fun. So having permission to spend on something just for fun actually will help you avoid rebound spending because guilt is really expensive.
I think that's so true, and it's like if you give yourself some space for some frivolous spending, you're less likely to make a huge chunk of it because that valve has too much pressure on it.
Yep.
Um, and when you are shopping for something, especially a major purchase, and you're waiting for sales, use technology to manage price alerts for you, not willpower. Let technology do the waiting.
Yep. I think that's a great one. And here's another one: use cash for your weak spots. It makes your spending a lot more concrete. So if you have that much cash for this over this period of time, you can actually see the cash deplete itself. And that makes it more likely that you'll stick to your budget for that item.
Save your windfalls, or at least save some of them, like tax refunds, bonuses, cash gifts. You never missed what you never had.
Okay. And in that same vein, I would say avoid the hedonic treadmill and delay your lifestyle upgrades. When you get a raise, stick to your old budget, at least for a while. New raises love old budgets. Great way to save money.
I know. The temptation is real, Doretta.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and celebrate the wins, no matter how small.
Okay. Okay, Lee, three key learnings from our two-part episode.
Only 3? We've done, like, a gazillion hacks, and I'm probably sure we've had to hold back on some things.
Prince,
Um,
come on,
yeah,
principles. First, principles.
okay. First, I would say don't buy more than you need and prioritize your wants in accordance with your values. I think that holds true for pretty much everything from your home to your car to your groceries. Just think about unused rooms, unused clothes, wasted food, unused subscriptions, and memberships. Just buy what you need. Not for the sake of buying, not for the sake of impressing other people, not because the influencer du jour says you have to have it.
Second, I would say learn and practice some basic skills. Everyone should know how to cook basic meals, be able to do basic care and maintenance of what we own, whether that's learning some basic skills yourself or making sure that routine maintenance is completed. Personally, even though I never got the chance to experience it myself, I would like to see them bring back mandatory home economics.
Lols. If you have not experienced it yourself, how would you know they're good?
Oh, I only didn't experience it because I was one of those obnoxious kids in a gifted class and we were exempted from home ec.
Well, whatever. Okay, fine, whatever. Uh, okay. I would say do your research, especially for major purchases and not just for price. Consult independent reviews to make sure your hard-earned cash is being spent on quality things or great experiences that deliver and last. And it's really important that you hear this part, which is the reviews. You got to take everything with a grain of salt. Review the top and the lowest because there could be some influencer who is being compensated to push products or services or to do those reviews. So they'll get like a free meal, a free item, whatever the case may be. So really do your research for those major purchases. And your local library can always be a great source of information.
And on that note, I think we'll stop there for today. If you've got any ideas to add or comments on what we suggested, why don't you drop us an email at notjustmoneypodcasts@gmail.com.
Good talk. You've been listening to Not Just Money with Doretta and Lee. Click on the show's description for links to resources related to today's conversation. Our aim is to share sources that provide objective information that can help you make informed financial decisions. Please rate and review our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us at notjustmoneypodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to be featured on the show, you can send us your questions and comments by a written email, audio file, or video file. Please include your name and city. This show is produced and edited by Lee, with original music by Leo Zhang cello and artwork by John Tu. Now for some legalese. Please note that the views expressed by our hosts and guests are theirs alone and should not be viewed as financial advice. This podcast is intended to be entertainment and educational in nature. Please seek additional professional support or information before acting on any podcast information. As always, good talk.